On June 19th, the Funcom team took to Reddit for an AMA, 2 weeks after the launch of Dune Awakening. There weren't any massive bombs, but it was certainly an interesting glimpse into the future of the game. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and here's everything we learned about the future of Dune Awakening. As expected, we got a lot of bits and pieces, promises and provocations, but no major announcements during the recent AMA. And while we haven't done a full review of Dune Awakening, I think you guys can tell from our content that we genuinely enjoy this game. But let me go on the record and say there's a lot that needs work. I broke things down into a few categories to try and create some semblance of organization, and I'll hit each of those with a bit of commentary around each topic based on our experience as an endgame guild. The team addressed a number of small things regarding servers, which I feel are important enough to mention. In response to the idea of merging low population servers, they did say that they'd be willing to consolidate servers when the time is right. This is something almost every MMO faces at some point. I don't see this being any different. The team also addressed server notifications being conveyed in UTC, not the local server time, to which they said improvements were being made, and I'd expect to see that with the next major update. Finally, in response to the idea of server transfers, the team seemed to shrug off that idea, instead pointing to the fact that you can visit other sietches and that future updates will remove restrictions entirely so that your character can move to any sietch within your world. Now, personally, I don't love this, as we've already had a friend or two expressed interest in wanting to join our clan, which is going to be impossible as a visitor to our world, even if they have most of the freedoms native players on the server have. Quality of life is honestly the category I am most interested in at this moment. 2 weeks plus after the game has launched, and there is a laundry list of things that, with some slight tweaks, would be incredible, and luckily the team addressed that broadly and then with some specifics. First and foremost, they said they're currently in the process of testing a lot of quality of life updates, too many to describe in the AMA format. It looks like everything is driving towards an early July patch, which might be the first major update to the game. I was actually really excited to see the specific examples the team is working on, which included major changes coming to storage containers. This is a no-brainer. If you're in a guild, you know this, and should be top of the list. Being able to change the color and visually label boxes is so desperately missing from this game, and with so many resources to gather and collect, especially in a group environment, we feel the pain of this one every day. They also mentioned true stackable containers, and while it is possible to achieve this now, something we talk about in our Wish I Knew Sooner tips and tricks video, it's not as obvious as you might think. The team also confirmed they'd be adding vehicle naming in an upcoming patch to help with guilds that are managing multiple vehicles in a fleet with no real way to differentiate them. On top of that, they're looking at ways to ease the loss of a vehicle in specific situations, noting that vehicles that get destroyed by a sandworm will always be a major setback. They also said they're looking into a way to replace one piece of a structure with another without the need to destroy it first. Huge for all the builders out there. Finally, the team acknowledged the need for a deposit all and extract all option, and yes, that means for water also, which they said was coming. Overall, I think these are all good first steps in regards to functional quality of life. These things don't address combat pain points, but that was intentional, as I separated PvE and PvP into two different buckets since they addressed a lot of those ideas separately. When I think of quality of life, I really focus on the small moments outside of the action that need to be refined, some of which they addressed. Now, before we dive into the big PvE and PvP things the developers addressed, I did want to mention they confirmed a third faction eventually coming to the game, which I thought was a pretty big deal. Currently, there's the Atreides and the Harkonnen, but a third house would dramatically change the dynamic of the game, the Landsraad in particular. They didn't say much more, but they did deny that House Corrino would not be that third house. When it comes to PvE adjustments and content additions, there was actually a surprising amount of information revealed. I think the biggest one is that they plan to release new major content every 3 to 4 months, roughly lining up with when each new DLC will come out. I think that number is okay, but given the pace at which people consume live service content nowadays, something closer to a 2-month mark would have been more ideal if the team wants this game to remain in the zeitgeist. One question that was everywhere during the AMA was about new contracts being added to the game, because as it stands right now, if you've completed everything at the various trade posts, you have very little reason to ever visit those locations again. The team did confirm that many new contracts will be coming to the game, and ones that have even more variety in their objectives, so rest easy questers, more is coming. The developers also talked about wanting to add more dynamic content to offer more gameplay variety. Our whole clan has been talking about this aspect of the game because, let's be honest, killing camp after camp of the same types of enemies really begins to get boring, so more interesting and dynamic activities across Arrakis would go a long way to breaking up the gameplay loop. Some players voiced complaints about the need for the Overland map, but the developers took a bit of time to explain how the Overland map is their vehicle to adding in new PvE maps, dynamic content, and more. So while it seems a little pointless now flying back and forth between cities, in the future there should be more apparent reasons for this system. Finally, the developers just wanted to reiterate that the Landsraad is meant to be the endgame PvE content, which we will talk about in a second here in more depth, but they aren't satisfied with where it is in its current state. They'll continue to expand and refine the system, of course, throughout the game's life until there is ample content for both PvE and PvP players. So this discussion piggybacks into talking about the Landsraad system. If you've been playing the game in any sort of maybe more hardcore fashion, you and your guild have likely begun interacting with this system. If you're unfamiliar with it, we do go over it in great detail in our Wish I Knew Sooner video. Players have been noticing that the house tasks that get revealed each day have been getting almost instantly locked. This is due to the larger guilds rapidly turning in the requests immediately after they're revealed. Not only has this made it difficult for smaller guilds to compete or complete any of these tasks for their rewards, but has made it nearly impossible for solo players to even engage with the system. Even when our team was farming the respective kill quests that pop up, there was no chance that anyone on our team was hitting that 14,000 contribution level before the quest was already completed. We were barely hitting 8,000 per person, and the quest was already done. As a guild that consistently tops our world's Atreides contribution leaderboard, even we sympathize with many of these complaints and expect some adjustments soon. There's enough data being collected that the devs feel confident making some tweaks moving forward. First, they want to make it so your contributions stack week after week, allowing you to work towards long-term rewards instead of getting locked out entirely. They want to compound this by adding even more tiers of rewards and new activity types to drive even more engagement in the Landsraad system overall, which should add some variety to the gameplay. Honestly, we think these changes are exactly what needs to happen. It'll still allow competitive guilds to fight for leaderboard spots each week, but gives solo players and small groups a chance to earn those higher tier rewards after several weeks. Last but certainly not least are the general concerns around PvP, and let me tell you guys, there's a lot being talked about here. First off, let's talk about dueling. Many people want it, our guild included, and they've confirmed it is absolutely coming to the game. This should allow players to get in enough practice within the safety of their guilds and bases and gain that confidence in PvP, or even potentially setting up guild versus guild disputes via dueling. If one thing was clear in the AMA, it's that the Deep Desert will remain free-for-all PvP. This system is not being changed, but they did expand on their overall vision for PvP in Dune by saying they are considering adding additional areas of the world that you can go to that will offer deliberate factional PvP. Now, as players who love games like PlanetSide, having a dedicated area of the map for this type of activity could be incredible. The team also expressed that they want to make ground combat a more reliable and viable experience. Not only are issues like desync and rubber banding things they're tracking, but changes that can shore up the glaring disparity between aerial and ground combat are being looked into as they pay attention to how things are unfolding each week. It's good that changes aren't being implemented as a knee-jerk reaction, but there is definitely a window for things to change, or else players will become frustrated and most likely quit. They also express that they want to do more with the control points in the Deep Desert to make them feel like real points of contention. This is something our guild has been asking for since we entered the Deep Desert, because it would drive engagement both from the air and from the ground. Finally, there's a lot of talk surrounding the balance of the Scout Ornithopter in PvP. Many offered the frankly absurd solution of removing their combat capabilities entirely, which thankfully the developers immediately shot down. Instead, they are looking at much more nuanced solutions that all have the possibility of making things like the Assault Ornithopter actually viable in combat. Now, these potential changes include rocket pods reducing overall maneuverability and max speed of a scout, meaning your skill with these vehicles matters even more. The use of rockets could cause slightly more heat to fire, meaning you need to be more deliberate in your shots, and things like the assault could be a much larger threat. And finally, thrusters providing a bonus to max speed at all times, even when gliding. That last one could definitely tip the balance in our opinion by hot swapping parts in the deep desert to engage and disengage, but it's still a reasonable idea if done correctly. A lot to unpack there, but all things pointing in the right direction. Guys, if you appreciate our Dune coverage, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up, and consider subscribing. We'll be with you every step of the way, including as new content drops, so keep it here and never miss a thing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.